Hi guys, this is week 23 Project Life and I am using a couple of new sets from Cali Stamps this week, the Go See Do set and the Railway Alpha. Now I've also got out all the new goodies that I had from my haul the other day. If you haven't seen that video, I will leave the link for you up above. But mostly all I'm going to use it for is to pull out some of these 6x6 papers to use for my spreads. So all I'm really using this week is some 6x6 papers and some stamps, which just goes to show you don't need a lot of supplies to do Project Life, although that is always the temptation, isn't it? I have just picked out, I guess, some more sort of neutral shades and patterns this week. I mean, we're in winter here, so my photos aren't brilliant. They're all sort of quite dark, with not a lot of colour in them this week. So there are a couple of pops of pink, and you'll see later on I do try to sort of pull those out with some stamps. So really all I've got is a couple of neutrals and that peachy stripe, which I really loved, and I'm just looking for one more pattern to go behind this photo, and I chose just a grey. It's quite textural, but just a plain sort of grey to match in with some of the other photos that I've got. At the back of this paper pad were some die cut pieces, and I did pull this one out to match the craft paper that I've already cut down, but it didn't really, it was almost like too straight edged, like because everything else was quite rough looking and that was very precise, it just sort of stood out to me. I had pulled out the navy blue pattern because I thought maybe I could tear a piece to echo those stripes down the bottom, but I don't end up doing that at all. It was quite heavy, quite dark, and because my photos are already quite dark, I didn't want to add too much more darkness to the page. I just stuck down those little photos that I already had, and now I'm going to start working on my cards. I had planned to use this Railway Alpha to stamp out a sentiment on this paper. I was going to stamp out yes, no, but you'll see I don't manage to fit that in. It was slightly too large to fit that, so I do end up having to reevaluate what I'm going to do. So I'm using one of the littlest stamps from the Go See Do, and actually I think it's the Go See Do stamp, and so here's where I realize I'm not going to fit no. I'm going to put that little stamp in between these two words, and because of that I can't fit 3 rows of the Railway Alpha, nor can I fit no across one line. So instead I just add some little partially inked dots, and I'm going to add an exclamation mark as well. Now, of course, this alpha doesn't actually have punctuation, so I'm just using partial inking to create my own. Now, here's where I decided to add a little bit of pink into this spread, and I just grabbed some pink ink and I stamped that directly on the paper anyway, because the paper's quite light, the pink shows up quite nicely. So instead of my third line of stamping with the no, I just do a little bit of journaling instead, which I hadn't intended to do this spread. I wasn't going to do a lot of journaling on here, but plans change. Now I wanted to stamp this photo. This is a snow day, well, snow morning anyway, that's why it's dark. We woke up to a blanketing of snow. So I added the stamp that says adventure, and I'm just going to use my Jelly Roll pen to put snow day, adventure. And I couldn't decide between the gold and the white ink. I chose the gold, and then in the end I decided to add a second stamp with the white ink anyway, and I really love how those two inks work together. Done this technique on a photo many months ago. I mean, it might have even been at the start of last year, I can't really remember, but I had repeat stamping with black and white ink, so I really wanted to do that again with this Go stamp. We didn't really go anywhere, to be honest. Like, this stamp set's, you know, quite adventure themed, and as you can tell, we didn't really go on any adventures. It was a sort of a home week, so I still think that you can use these themed stamps for totally non-themed weeks. It's easy. You just have to pick the more sort of subtle phrases, I guess, and be open to the fact that just going for a walk on the beach was actually going somewhere. So I repeated that stamping. There are 2 different stamps. I stamped the solid one in black and then repeated that in the white outline, and I really love how it looked. I wasn't sure that the white was going to stand out on the beach enough, but it totally did. I had a couple of fairly typical animal photos this week, so I'm creating my own little embellishments with the I was here stamp. I just stamped it onto some white paper and fussy cut those out, and then I'm going to stick them onto my little animal photos. One of the cat right in front of the fire, which is fairly typical for winter, and one of Lily, who decided to be super helpful and sit on my pile of curtains as I was trying to change out the curtains in the house. So again, fairly typical, being totally helpful. But what I liked was that repeat element, having the same element on 2 different photos in the spread. So I'm going to do the same thing with these 2 cards here, as I'm going to stamp out a phrase on them. But what I want to do is I sort of wanted a tone on tone look so that I can add some journaling on top. So I'm just going through my inks, trying to find one that sort of matches. I don't have any ink that goes well tone on tone with craft. So in the end, I go for this sort of warm grey. It's cement ink from A Beautiful Mess, and I'm just going to stamp out a little phrase on the bottom of both of these cards, and I'm using the same ink for both of them. I guess the harder one to match was that craft coloured paper, because this grey goes perfectly with this grey paper here. So it's sort of a trade-off, I guess, but I didn't have any better one for the craft colour, so both of them work nicely together. Just shuffling them around because I didn't like the way that all of that stamped writing was sitting on top of each other, so I just shuffled those 3x4 cards around. And now I'm just going to work on my title card. Now I know that I'm going to stamp out the entire phrase, so week 23. And so this time I want to be careful to make sure I'm going to be able to get the 3 lines in there. So I do a tiny bit of planning before I start stamping out. And I'm going to use that same cement coloured ink. So I've stamped out week in black, and then I'm going to use the cement to stamp out the 23. Just because I think if it was done all in black, it would have been quite heavy. There is quite a lot of stamping there. Plus I like the way it ties in all those grey tones again. But again, I can't have it too grey, so I grabbed my Labels 101 set from Kelly Stamps again, and I'm just stamping out this fairly large label in the same pink that I used before. So you'll see there's a little bit of pink in the albums that are behind Lily in that photo, and I think just adding those few little pieces of stamping in the pink just helped to tie that colour in. Now this label is super big, so easy enough to fit my date stamping and the little heart as normal, and I will add some embellishment to that in just 1 minute. But first I had let those ink stamps just dry a little bit before I did my journaling on top there. Not adding a lot of journaling, just a few lines, but it gives me 3 places of journaling, which again, you know I love the number 3 on a spread. So here's the tiny bit of embellishing that I'm going to do on this page this week. I've just got these self-adhesive sequins again, and I'm going to add them just all over the show really. So I'm not in 3 places this week. I think I end up with 5, so I guess it's odd numbers. 3 is my preference, but odd numbers if I can't get with 3. And this one I really liked, those big sequins. They're still very flat, so I added it sort of off to the side and managed to trim it. A few on my title card and call this page done. I'll leave the link down below to the Kelly Stamps store where you can pick up both of these stamp sets. I do know that the Railway Alpha is selling fast. If you liked this video, please give it a thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. If you want to keep watching, there's a couple more videos on screen. Otherwise, I'll see you next time. Bye!